You open the app. You scroll past the transaction list, the coffees, the groceries, the subscription you forgot to cancel 2 years ago. And then the number at the bottom stops you. It's not the number you expected. Or maybe it is, and that's exactly the problem. You close the app. You open it again 3 days later. The number is still there, and now it's slightly larger. Here's the thing. Most people in that moment do exactly what feels natural. They minimize it, they round it down. They tell themselves they'll deal with it next month. And that delay is precisely how a manageable problem becomes an unmanageable one. Not because of one bad decision, but because of the quiet, relentless math running underneath every month you wait. What nobody tells you in that moment is this: the number itself doesn't determine your options. What determines your options is which number it is, because at every level of debt, the tools available to you are completely different. Use the wrong tool for the wrong level, and you can turn a solvable problem into a decade-long trap. So today, 5 levels of debt, from $500 to $50,000. What your real options are at each one, what to do and what not to do in each zone. Before we get into the levels, a few numbers worth holding in your head. The average American carrying credit card debt right now is paying an interest rate of 21.52% per year, according to Federal Reserve data from Q1 2026. Americans collectively owe $1.252 trillion on credit cards as of this year, the highest level ever recorded. And 13.12% of those balances are now more than 90 days past due, the highest delinquency rate in 15 years. These aren't abstract statistics. They're the backdrop to a very specific and very solvable problem, if you know which level you're at and which lever to pull. Let's walk through every level. Level 1, $500. $500 feels small when you say it out loud, but small is relative. If you're only paying the minimum on a $500 balance, around $25 a month at most card minimums, at the current average interest rate of 21.52%, that $500 takes just over 2 years to fully disappear. And by the time it does, you'll have paid about $125 in interest on top of it, nearly 25% extra just for the privilege of spreading the payments out. At this level, your options are wide open, and that's precisely why this is the moment to move, not when it feels urgent, but now, when it's still small enough that every option is available. Option 1, pay it off aggressively. At $100 a month instead of $25, you're done in 5 months and you pay less than $30 in interest total. The math is simple and brutal in your favor. Option 2, call the issuer and ask for a lower rate. A June 2026 LendingTree survey found that 84% of cardholders who requested an APR reduction were successful, with an average decrease of 6.3 percentage points, and only 23% of people had ever tried asking. That's a door most people don't even know they can knock on. Option 3, if your credit is in decent shape, a 0% balance transfer card buys you 12 to 18 months of interest-free repayment, usually with a 3 to 5% one-time transfer fee. On $500, that fee is $15 to $25, and you pay nothing else in interest as long as you clear the balance before the promotional period ends. At $500, your biggest enemy isn't the debt, it's inertia. Level 2, $5,000. This is where the math starts to turn against you in ways that feel completely invisible, because the minimum payment is still affordable, which makes the trap almost comfortable. If you owe $5,000 at 21.52% and you're paying $100 a month, which might genuinely feel like responsible, consistent effort, you will not be done in a couple of years. You'll be done in 10.6 years, and you won't pay back $5,000. You'll pay back $12,770, over $7,700 in interest layered on top of the original amount. Think about that for a second. You borrow $5,000, you make your payment every single month, never miss one, never slip, and you still end up paying $12,770. That $7,700 is not a penalty for being irresponsible. It's just the math of letting compound interest work against you instead of for you. The same mechanism that builds wealth in an investment account quietly destroys it in a debt account. Here's where your options split based on your credit standing. If your credit is in decent shape, roughly 670 or above, A debt consolidation personal loan becomes a genuinely powerful tool. The average rate on a personal loan right now sits at around 11.4%, according to the Federal Reserve. At that rate, a 3-year loan on the same $5,000 costs you about $165 a month, and compared to minimum payments, you save nearly $6,800 in total interest. Same debt, completely different outcome. If your credit is thinner, the balance transfer path still works at this level, but read the fine print before you move. Those 0% promotional windows have expiration dates, and the rate that activates on day 366 is usually worse than the one you started with. Know the date. Put it in your calendar. Treat it like a deadline, because it is. You may be thinking, but I can't qualify for a consolidation loan right now. That's legitimate, and it's actually the strongest argument for working on your credit before the debt grows any larger. Every level above this one costs more. Options don't just change as the number goes up. They get more expensive and harder to access. If you're getting value from this, subscribe before you keep scrolling. This channel covers exactly this kind of thing. Real numbers, real options, no hype. Level 3, $15,000. At $15,000, the minimum payment trap doesn't just close around you. It becomes nearly impossible to see out of without external help. At $300 a month, a realistic minimum for this balance, you reach payoff in 10.6 years. Total paid, $38,310. You borrowed $15,000, and you'll hand back more than 2.5 times that amount. The extra $23,000 goes entirely to interest. It builds nothing, buys nothing, and leaves nothing behind. The right move here, if you can qualify, consolidation loan, 5-year term, at or near the 11.4% average rate. Monthly payment works out to approximately $329, barely more than your current minimum. Total interest paid, $4,748. Interest saved compared to staying on minimum payments, over $18,500. Debt is not a math problem with one solution. It's a math problem with a deadline. But there's something critical to understand at this level that the loan calculators won't tell you. The consolidation only works if you stop using the original cards. This is the failure point for most people who consolidate. The cards are empty now. They feel available. The credit limit is right there. And slowly, over the next 18 months, a second debt stack quietly rebuilds while the consolidation loan is still running. If you go the consolidation route, the original accounts need to be closed, or at minimum treated as if they don't exist. Option 2 at this level, a nonprofit credit counseling agency. Organizations affiliated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling can negotiate directly with your creditors to set up a debt management plan, often reducing your interest rate to somewhere between 6 and 9%, without requiring you to take on new debt. You make one monthly payment to the agency, they distribute it to your creditors, and you're out in 3 to 5 years. This works especially well when your credit score has already taken some damage and a personal loan would come with a punishing rate. Level 4, $30,000. At $30,000, you are operating with fewer options, higher stakes, and a much shorter window before the situation becomes self-sustaining in the wrong direction. At $600 a month in minimum payments, the familiar 10.6-year clock restarts again. And by the end, you'll have paid $46,620 in interest on top of the original $30,000. Total repayment, $76,620 for a debt that started at $30,000. A personal loan at 15%, which is realistic for someone with fair credit in this range, over 5 years runs about $714 a month and costs $12,822 in interest. That's still a savings of more than $33,000 compared to staying on minimum payments for a decade. You may be thinking, I can't manage $714 a month either. That's a completely fair concern, and it's precisely the reason to start this process now, not later. Every month that passes on minimum payments is a month the window for better options narrows and the total cost of the problem grows. The option that feels uncomfortable today is almost always cheaper than the option that's available 6 months from now. At this level, there's also a path most people don't know exists. Hardship programs directly with your card issuers. These are almost never advertised. You have to call and ask directly. Explain your situation, tell them you're struggling to keep up with the rate, and ask if there's a temporary reduced rate program or modified payment plan. Some issuers will offer 3 to 6 months at 0% or a significantly reduced rate for customers who ask before they've missed payments. Not all will, but some will, and the ones that won't are no worse off for you having asked. Level 5, $50,000. At $50,000, you are past the point where conventional tools can be applied cleanly. That doesn't mean options have disappeared. It means every remaining option carries real trade-offs, and none of them should be approached without professional guidance. The minimum payment picture at this level is almost difficult to write down. $1,000 a month for 10.6 years means repaying $127,700 total. You borrowed $50,000. The interest alone on this balance at 21.52% is more than $10,000 per year, which means some minimum payments don't even fully cover the interest accruing that month. At this level, 3 realistic paths exist. Debt settlement, negotiating directly with creditors to accept less than the full amount owed. This will damage your credit score, sometimes severely. The forgiven amount may be taxable as income, and the process can take 2 to 4 years. But if your alternative is default or bankruptcy, it can meaningfully reduce the total you owe. Not something to navigate alone. Bankruptcy, Chapter 7 can discharge unsecured debt like credit cards, but not all debt qualifies, and the filing stays on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. Chapter 13 establishes a structured repayment plan under court protection. Bankruptcy is not the end of a financial life. It is a legal mechanism that exists specifically for situations where the math has legitimately outrun the available options. Debt management plan through a nonprofit agency. At $50,000, this path matters more than ever. No new debt required, no collateral, and negotiated rates can bring the monthly cost down significantly. The timeline is longer, but the structure provides stability when everything else feels like it's in free fall. What does not work at $50,000 under any circumstances is hoping the minimum payment will gradually solve it. It won't. The options narrow as the number grows. They never reach zero, but the cost of waiting compounds right alongside the debt. Here's the thing nobody says out loud about debt. The level you're at is almost never entirely the result of bad decisions. Medical bills. A job that disappeared. A month where the car and the rent and the unexpected expense all arrived at the same time. A season of life that required you to borrow in order to keep going. Sometimes debt is not a record of irresponsibility. It's a record of a crisis, of surviving something difficult with the tools that were available. But here's the other side of that. The level you stay at. That part is a decision, not because it's easy, but because staying is also a choice. And the longer you wait to look at the real number, not the approximate one, not the rounded down version, but the exact number, the more expensive that choice becomes. Every tool in this video works, but every tool only works if you aim it honestly at the right target. To summarize, at $500, move fast. Inertia is the only real enemy. At $5,000, the minimum payment trap is invisible but expensive. Consolidation or a balance transfer resets the math in your favor. At $15,000, a loan or a nonprofit plan can save you over $18,000 in interest, but only if you close the original cards. At $30,000, hardship programs and personal loans are still available, but the window narrows every month you wait. At $50,000, conventional tools may not be enough, and the 3 serious options all require professional guidance, not guesswork. Which level are you at right now? And did the numbers in this video change how you're thinking about it? Drop it in the comments. No judgment, just the level, 1 through 5, and what your